Good morning, world.
Good morning.
Today's subject is CRT racist?
For those who don't know, CRT stands for Colored Reason Trickery. And it...
I don't think that's what it stands for.
Colored Reason Trickery. No, critical race theory.
Critical race, you know, that stuff that
Yes.
Biden wants to start teaching.
Yes, to bring about unity.
So that's what we're talking about today.
Before we get into that, make sure you like, subscribe, ring that bell, and share our videos with everyone you know.
I don't know, Cedric. They might be new. They might not like us. They might have to get a little feeling for our channel first. You just want to jump in?
You can
unsubscribe
later.
Okay, all right.
But right now, like, subscribe, ring that bell. I'm Cedric.
And I'm Brian, and this is Cedric and Brian. I wanted to do this subject today because me as a straight white male, I'm not really supposed to talk about it because I need to be in my place. Isn't CRT or critical race theory, isn't that racist?
It's very racist. It's something that, we're going to talk about this later on, it was something that was tried to be done away with by number 45, Donald Trump, but in recent weeks and months, well, since January 20th, has been brought back into the mainstream consciousness, and most namely schools, by our current president. And it's all, although he says it's for unity, it's nothing more than a divisive tactic. So we're going to go through that a little bit and educate you guys a little bit on what CRT is.
Code word there is anti-racism, right?
Yeah.
Anti-racism, which really doesn't mean, because when you think anti-racism, anti is not, so it's not racist, right? But it's not, it's reverse racism.
Right.
Because as Cedric's going to bring up, the school systems now, thank God, are getting backlash from parents.
Yeah.
And not just white parents, because they're teaching our kids racism.
There's 5 major components to CRT, and we're going to go through those 5 really quick to give you an idea. These are the 5 building blocks or the pillars on which CRT stands. Number 1, it says racism is ordinary and not arbitrary. This is one of their major tenets. Because racism is ordinary. Basically what they're saying is that racism is everywhere. It's an everyday part of life. It's not an aberration. It's not something that happens once in a blue moon like Halley's Comet. It is something that's there consistently and persistently ever since the beginning of time. And white people especially, you need to be aware of that at all times.
But that's the thing. They go against their own tenets because they say it's everywhere, but when you actually question them on it, it's only by white people against what they call now BIPOCs. It used to be POCs, but for some reason they added black, indigenous, people of color, when before we were just told people of color included black people.
Right.
So I don't. It's kind of like the LGBT, where they kept adding letters.
Yeah.
It sounds like they're doing it again. It's POC, now it's BIPOC.
Yeah, they keep adding letters to make it more convenient.
So it's not that it's everywhere. It's that it's everywhere if it's perpetrated by a white person, because they even say that basically you can't be racist if you're black.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So they're going against number 1, first tenet. They're already going against it. Go ahead.
Yes.
Continue.
Number 2 is the concept of there's interest convergence. Basically, what that means to CRT is that white people will allow certain things to happen if it benefits black people to a certain degree, and then it benefits white people as well.
That sounds more like the Democratic Party in the 60s.
Yeah. Or it could be something that you don't know. It's like maybe accusing a cop of a crime that he wasn't really guilty of to appease the black community.
Got a side note for you. The prosecutor on the Derek Chauvin case, when he was asked why didn't he prosecute a hate crime too, he says because he only wanted to do things that there was evidence for. So there was no evidence by the own prosecutor that this had anything to do with race. So why did we see riots all summer long about race?
Yeah.
Why? It was very enlightening that the prosecutor who wanted to do second-degree murder, third-degree murder, manslaughter, he said nothing proving that it had anything to do with race. Yeah, that's what all the riots were for.
Yeah, exactly. Number 3 is the social construct of race. Basically saying that race is a social construct, and racism is a social construct. It's inbred in our society. It's bred in what we do.
So we made up that you're darker than me? It's not fact. It's just a social construct.
It is fact, but you're lighter than I am. I'm darker than you are. But it's a social construct that we are going to butt heads because racism is something that connects us.
Oh, we butt heads, but it's not because of race.
Well, we butt heads because I'm usually right and you're wrong, and you can't accept that. That's the only reason we butt heads.
Okay.
Do you want to comment on that?
No, go ahead.
Okay, number 4 is storytelling and counter storytelling. And this is great. And they've stolen this from learning back in the days, because basically learning back in the day when our grandfathers and our grandparents learned, they learned by storytelling, singing, lyrical stuff like that. CRT is basically based on storytelling, telling glorious stories and then anti-storytelling to debunk whatever people on the right say. So as long as you still tell an incredible story, you can pretty much capsulize your audience and get them to believe anything that you want.
It's feelings-based.
And the 5th one, the last one is that whites, you guys have benefited greatly from the civil rights movement.
Okay.
I paused there so you could comment on there. You've been the recipients of civil rights.
Wait, which part of the civil rights? You mean affirmative action? We benefit from affirmative action?
Yes.
You're going to have to explain that one.
And the way they explain that is that because more black people have been involved in work now due to hiring quotas and things like that, it has bettered your lives. So you've benefited more from it than we have.
Okay.
But those are the 5 pillars, the foundation. You can look it up more. There's a
what do you guys think about that?
Yeah, there's like a 19-page thing that I looked at that went through all this in greater detail. I had to get through the entire thing without puking, but that's basically what CRT is. To give you a quick anecdotal story, and that's number 4, storytelling, of what critical race theory is. Brian and I and some friends of ours, we're going to go to our favorite brewery this evening. And when we walk into the brewery, if I get served first, it's because the owner thinks that I'm a threat to his establishment and he needs to get me in and get me out as quickly as possible. If he serves Brian first, it's because the shop owner believes that I am a second-class citizen and therefore I can wait because the white person has to be served first. That is the basic concept of CRT, is that you will find racism everywhere.
I'm going to bring that to a current event that we talked about last time. The officer who shot Micaiah Bryant? Micaiah, that's right. Micaiah Bryant. We did a whole episode on naming your kids.
Yes.
If that officer would have stood there and watched Micaiah Bryant kill that other girl, he would have been hung in the public square. Instead, he stopped her from, guess what? According to LeBron James, he's next. He was hung in the public square. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. If that person at the brewery serves him first, it's because he wants to get rid of him. He serves me first, it's because he's a racist. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. Yeah. That's why this critical race theory stuff is so poisonous, and why you have to do everything you can to fight against it. And it's the reason Trump got rid of it. It's not because Trump's a racist. He knows that this was divisive.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
It divides people based on an arbitrary skin tone. And there's all kinds of skin tones, from very, very pale. My wife, who's Hispanic, is paler than I am. So where do you put her in the POC? Biden and his administration wants to push this. He wants to buddy with peoples like Ingram X. Kendi and the white fragility lady. This stuff is so dangerous. If you think, oh, it's no big deal, it's not going to affect me, it is going to affect you, because they're teaching it now all the way from preschoolers through graduate students. Mm-hmm. So guess what? We're going to be lucky. We'll be dead and gone, but our poor kids and grandkids are going to have to live through this stuff. Yeah. So if you care about your kids and your grandkids, speak up.
And like most ideas, whether good, bad, or indifferent, they have an inception that someone created that. The Frankenstein monster was created by someone, Dr. Frankenstein. And the creator of CRT is Richard Delgado and his wife, Jean Stefancic. I'm not going to get into a whole lot of detail about them. I thought the irony was that Mr. Delgado, Professor Delgado, he's a professor of University of Law at the University of Alabama, which was the birthplace of the Civil Rights Movement. But the fact that he's teaching there is kind of ironic. I want to read something from you real quick at what he says about race. I'm expected to tell the kids that if they study hard and stay out of trouble, they can become a law professor like me. This, however, is a very big lie. A whopper. When I started teaching law 16 years ago, there was about 35 Hispanic law professors, approximately 25 of which were Chicano. Today, the numbers are only slightly improved. In the interim, however, a nearly complete turnover has occurred. The faces are new, but the numbers have remained the same from year to year. Gonzalez leaves teaching. Velasquez is hired someplace else. Despite this, I am expected to tell 40 kids in a crowded inner city classroom that if they work hard, they can be among the chosen 25. Fortunately, most kids are smart enough to figure out that the system does not work that way. This really what got me here. He goes, if I were honest, I can't believe he said this. If I were honest, I would advise them to become Major League Baseball players or to practice their hook shots. As Michael Levis points out, the odds, pay, and working conditions are much better in these than other lines of work. So here's a professor, and he's telling these POCs that you have a better chance of being a professional athlete than you do of being a professor.
This is the kind of stuff that's poison. It may be that they just don't want to become lawyers. And I'm not going to discount the fact that it's harder to bring yourself out of poverty, but they want to go to a socialist system where you can't bring yourself in different classes. In this country, you have been. Again, that's why there is a Clarence Thomas. That's why there was a Barack Obama. That's why there's a DeSantis. And here I think of Cuban descent. You've got Ted Cruz.
Ted Cruz.
Yeah. Cruz, Mr. Delgado, right?
Yes.
That sounds like a Hispanic name to me. He's doing quite well for himself as much as people like you want to demonize him.
Right.
So stop it.
He said that they have a better, he said, I want to be honest with them and tell them they have a better chance of being professional athletes than they do of going to some type of other field. While about 1.5% of all high school players will make it into the NCAA college play, less than 0.2% will be drafted into the pros.
And I think that's where the focus is wrong. If you're telling somebody that, hey, you're pretty good, they'll tell them as early as, 5th grade, oh my gosh, you have the potential to be a professional basketball player, football player, baseball player. You're lying to them. Right. They may be the next LeBron James guy.
Oh, I hope not.
But guess what? If they study and go to law school, guess what? They can become a lawyer. They may not become a famous lawyer, but they're going to make a good living and feed their family. They can become a doctor. And all you have to do is work hard. And I've been listening to a professor, because now that we have the ability to listen to Zoom meetings because our kids are in school, they're straight out teaching not only this critical race theory, but they're teaching Marxism, they're teaching socialism. And it's, like I said before, I know I harped on it, but stand up, people. You can't just sit back and watch it. It's different than before.
That's a great segue, because now we talked about in the opening is like, what's the difference between what Trump did and what Biden is doing? Now, Trump tried to do away with CRT in the workplace and schools.
Well, anything federal.
Now that Biden has come along, in those first few days, we talked about how he just took his pen and blindly signed scores and scores of executive orders. A lot of that was banning Trump's ban on diversity, training about systemic racism, because Trump had put a ban on that. Said, no, we're going to talk about how incredible America is. And like Brian said, if you work hard, if you're diligent, if you're consistent, you put in the effort, you can become whatever you want. With one stroke of a pen, Biden said, nope, we're not going to teach that anymore. We're going to teach that there is racism.
Yeah, and they're teaching kids that you can't succeed because you're a BIPOC or a POC, which is the worst thing in the world. Could you imagine, and all of you parents out there, if your kids come up to say, I want to do that. No, sorry, you can't. You're going to just deflate them. To take dreams away from people when it just has to do with hard work, and that's the thing that you hear all the time. Quit telling black kids or BIPOCs that if they work hard, they can succeed. They say that's a lie. That's not a lie, and that's what you want to teach them, because they will succeed at something.
Right. And the thing that's why this is becoming so prevalent now is that the Biden administration, they're offering federal grants to further the lessons. Now, you guys know the end of this sentence. Cash is king. If you throw money at something, they will teach. And that's where a lot of these professors, whether they believe it or not, and that's why, Brian and I, we've gotten a lot of flack for saying this, but I say it all the time. If your child is involved, especially in a government indoctrination center, we call them public schools, they're being fed this because that's where the funding is coming from. It's coming from the government. And so they're saying is, as long as we give you this money, you will teach to this ideology. It's your livelihood. And after a while, you teach it long enough, you start to believe it. And a lot of, and you parents, don't let your teachers do all the work. I know it's hard out there. You guys are going to work. Yeah.
Especially now.
You drop your kids off at school for 6, 7, 8 hours a day, and they're interacting more with their teachers than they are with you. And you have no idea what these teachers are putting in your kids' heads nowadays. If you don't take the onus upon yourself to teach your kids something, they'll become the walking indoctrination experiment just like the rest of the kids have been. Funny, we got to find the link for this video. You heard the one about the child during Black History Month. You're supposed to pick a black hero. This young girl picked Candace Owens. And she was brought into the office and said that was the wrong black person. Like, how do you be the wrong black person? Either you're black or you're not. And so she was reprimanded for that, for talking about Candace Owens, because Candace Owens is not viewed as a true black hero because she's conservative. She believes in hard work. She believes in perseverance. She believes in pulling herself up by her bootstraps, and that's not what they wanted to hear.
No, you have to teach that people of color are victims, and that's the only thing they can teach in the school, because to them everything else is a lie. Yeah. And all the people that are successful that are black, that's an illusion, or it's just luck, or like you said, they always cover their butts on these things, because then they can just say, oh, well, that's still the system that brought them up, just to give white people a reason to keep promoting this nonsense.
But everything, like, to get back what CRT is based on, science, society, economics, education, family, everything is seen through the lens of whiteness. And that's what CRT teaches you. Like, everything you do, when you try and achieve, and you try and get better, and you try and speak well, and you read, that is you trying to be white. If you honor family, and you honor hard work, and delayed gratification, and being objective, they're saying that, see, that's just a white man trying to get you to come to their way of thinking, and we don't want you to do that.
Yeah, go back and look at our episode. We did an episode where the Smithsonian, not the Museum of African American Studies or something like that, they had to take it down. They were just teaching CRT. That's all they were doing. The stuff that they're teaching in schools, they got such backlash that they had to take it down, because it basically said, hard work, you're being white.
Yeah.
Family, white.
Right.
So when we recognize it, when you stand up, you do have the power to get rid of it. But the problem is, especially with Biden in office, and he's basically accepted this, probably because of his own guilt, because we know he's been a racist in the past.
Oh, yeah.
And he's trying to do away with his guilt by punishing the rest of us. All we can ask you, as watchers of us, besides sharing our videos and liking them and subscribing, is talk about the subjects that we talk about to your friends, and use our videos if you need to use them.
Yeah. Another story I want to share. You guys heard this on the news recently. A dad by the name of Andrew Gutman at a very prestigious prep school, Beerley School in New York. Tuition's about $54,000 a year. He went and he wrote a very scathing, I think the letter is on, you can find it on the internet. I don't know if it was like 7,000 words that he wrote to the administration about them teaching this. And I have to read this. I wrote it down. It says, he basically told the administration, I did not send my daughter to the school for you to teach her that she should be ashamed or embarrassed for being white. And after reading his quote, he said exactly, he said, she hasn't been brainwashed yet by the school, but she has me at home. That's a dad who's saying, you know what, who my daughter becomes in the future, that is up to me and her mom.
People in their hearts feel that they're doing the right things. I'm sure these white liberal professors think they're doing the right thing. They may think they, in good intentions, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. They don't understand that they are teaching racism. All we're asking you on this episode, learn about CRT, critical race theory, educate yourself, talk to your kids. You got a comment though, right?
Oh, yeah. Yes, don't forget about this comment.
This comment kind of fits our narrative right now, and this is why we love the comments from everybody out there watching. Please comment. Even if it's just to say hi, say, hey, what's up, Cedric and Brian, or like that one person said when they saw my wife and his girlfriend, they said, oh, where did you find those blind birdie girls?
I was offended by that. I responded by saying, yes, they are blind. But anyway, this came after we did the review of Tom McDonald's song White Boy. And I had to screenshot this one and send it to Brian, because this one was just impactful. He goes by the name of Succession Gets Closer Every Day. And he says, I used to be a member of a hate group that was sold to me as a defensive group for whites and the blatant hate we receive. Black YouTubers with common sense and compassion is what caused me to leave and denounce them. A YouTube personality known as Anthony Brian Logan woke me up to the errors in my way. He says, to Cedric, keep it up. The political left breeds racism with the resentment they cause within portions of the white community, especially ones in areas with no black people. The most vocal black people parroting Democrats hating our children is all many of us have ever seen. The more exposure we get, that you don't hold us all accountable for deeds before our lives and openly hate us and our kids is more important than anything in our society, in my opinion. The service you're doing for our society and your community can't be overstated. So here's a guy very much like, I'm assuming he's a white guy, but like Candace Owens, when she said she had to make a choice to leave the Democratic plantation, there are people on the other side, white people, who have been indoctrinated that all black people hate white people. Mm-hmm. It is the media, it is the left who is trying to pump the stuff, the CRT, that black and whites can't get along, that we're falling apart. They are tearing us apart. And if you allow it, Like this man here, and I love the fact that he commented. He said, "I made a conscious choice when I saw other black people." He said, "Wait a minute,
Well, you know what's great
we
about
all
that?
hate each other."
He was part of basically a white supremacist type group because he thought he had to defend himself against everybody that hated him. Well, CRT is teaching people to hate each other, so now you're going to put more people. Luckily, he found Logan.
Yes.
Logan Brian. I can't remember his name right now. Luckily, he found him. Otherwise, he would have got deeper and deeper thinking that the races need to be separated. That's what CRT teaches, that the races need to be separated. That's why they have separate graduations. That's why they have, if you watch our episode with Kenny, KC,
Yes.
that's why he talked about they wanted to do an outreach program for the black community. And he said, wait a minute, isn't that segregation? I hope you get how important we feel. I really felt strong about this subject, and I wanted to do it. People like Anthony Brian Logan, it's so important because he's not spewing that leftist CRT stuff. He's a conservative guy talking about individuality and that everybody is responsible for themselves regardless of color. So thank you, Anthony Brian Logan. I should remember that name because he's got my name in there.
I know. Yes.
And John Dawson on TikTok. Who else do we watch? Brandon Tatum.
Jericho Green.
And of course, Candace Owens. So,
Candace Owens.
Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope it made you feel something, and I hope you share the opinions and this video with people, because we cannot let this continue.
Yeah, I know you guys are tired after work. I'll end this with this. Find out what your kids learned at school. Just don't say, "Hey, how was school today, honey?" And that's just the beginning of conversation. You have to dig deeper and say, "What did you guys talk about in school today?" Because like Brian said, if you talk about Candace Owens during Black History Month, or you say that policemen are your heroes, there'll be a lot of teachers out there that try and debunk that and tell your kids like, "No, that really shouldn't be your hero. Here's why." But thank you guys for watching. Make sure you get your hats. Brian's wearing his backwards, but you can see mine's on front here. Make sure you get your Cedric and Brian swag. And again, make sure you like, make sure you subscribe, make sure you ring that bell, and please share our videos with everyone you know, especially if you don't feel comfortable talking about it yourself. Until next time, I'm Cedric.
And I'm Brian. We'll see you later.